Christine, could you try to share you might actually be able to do that already. I don't think I have to do something.
Perfect. Yes, I can. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. It's fine. It works.
Perfect. And I'm second in our session, aren't I?
Sorry?
I said I'm second in our
You're
session.
second. Yes, you're second. But I think we were just waiting to see if Anthony from Uforum shows up. So just to briefly say good morning, maybe he doesn't. Yeah, but maybe Maria, are you there? Should we get started just to avoid that the program gets too delayed from the beginning?
That's up to you. I only inform you about some problems we had, but...
Yeah, okay. I think we will get started.
Yes, we can begin.
Hey, yeah, sorry, shall we begin? Patience, do you want to say something before we start?
Okay, I can say a few words.
Yeah,
good afternoon, everybody. Good morning to the others who live on the other side of the world. I would wish to take this chance to welcome you to our second session of our conference, Academia Industry Virtual Conference on Education, Research, and Incubation. And we are looking at the role of universities in agri-entrepreneurship and community engagement. Yesterday, we had fruitful discussions, and today we are continuing with some other speakers. So at this juncture, I wouldn't wish to take a lot of time. I would wish that we start the program, and I'm going to take this back to Nico, who is the moderator for the first session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Patience. Yes, we are starting today with a very exciting session that has the title, The Role of University Incubators in the Promotion of Agri Entrepreneurship in Research in Africa. And to inspire us on this topic, we have two speakers. We will start with Bisan Abdulkader, who is from the University Mohammed VI Polytech University, also known as UM6P, and she is the strategic director of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Lab at UM6P. And following Bisan, we have the pleasure to have Christine Kirkpatrick, who is from Colorado University, and Christine is the executive director of a program called Together We Grow. And this program is a network of a lot of different universities and agricultural related food industries and other industries and government agencies and NGOs and other people. It's a long list. So very exciting initiative that we're also going to hear a little about how they I have the impression that it is more about the system level change in the university setting in terms of maybe the lifelong skills or the, I don't know, if it's still popular to say 21st century skills, or it has got another name now, but these transversal skills that we know are associated with, among other things, entrepreneurship. So those are the two presentations. And so first we will start with Bisan. Bisan, please take the word. And just to make clear the organization of this, we originally we had 10 minutes, but now since we are a little delayed, if you can do it shorter, it's okay. Otherwise, you will get your 10 minutes. Please.
Many thanks, Professor Carson Nico, for this introduction, and of course for the organizers of today's conference, and for everyone who made the effort to attend the first day and the second day. So the role of university incubators in the promotion of research and agripreneurship is the topic that we'll be discussing today. I am, as the Director of Strategy of the Innovation Entrepreneurship Lab. Glad to present to you the lab on behalf of my colleague, the head of the lab, Mr. Adnan Alawi Sulaimani, who could not make it today. However, we work so closely with each other that I can present that not only our lab, but also UM6P platform of innovation and entrepreneurship, which could be really an important role model of how to valorize research using tools coming from incubation. Okay, I'm trying to get to the next slide. So the agenda of today's presentation will be very fast, but I'll try to fit everything. On first, introducing Mohammed VI Polytechnic University, then our platform of innovation entrepreneurship, giving examples of successful programs that we have run across Africa, such as Impulse Acceleration Program, and the one UM6P Explore program, which is really gaining attention as well across Africa, and we launched with collaboration with the collaboration of MIT Sandbox. Then we will focus on the project of valorization of research work with the initiative of Technology Transfer Office of UM6P. And then what we're working under the program of Agri Engage, developing the Agri Engage Incubator and bringing the light to some of the startups that we have incubated in U Founders and the ones we are inviting to join the incubator of Agri Engage. UM6P in numbers, as you see, it's a growing community that is based on the value of research and education in the African context. However, it's at international level, the operation that we do at UM6P and the partnerships that we have. In the DNA of UM6P, the learning by doing and adopting innovation in all the stages of the study and research. The university has been founded by the King Mohammed VI, and this is why it has his name. As you can see, today we have a total number of 3,400 students. We have international full-time students, as well as that they take 6.9% of the total body of our university, and we aim to increase that. You can also see that we look at we have like more females studying than male in our university. This university is covering research at PhD level as well masters and offer bachelor programs. What are the institutions that Mohammed VI Polytechnic University offering? They go under 3 clusters: the Science and Technology, Humanities, and Business cluster. There are 2 doctoral schools. One of them is the Center for Doctoral Studies for Science and Technology, and the other for the Humanities, and including the Business cluster. What are the programs that we are offering? In a very innovative curricula, many programs, they are interdisciplinary, gathered to create clusters. The most important ones, the famous ones, are EMEAS and ESAF, the School of Agriculture, Fertilizers, and Environment Science. As well, we have the Africa Business School that serve in providing international level of education of business to Africa. We have in partnership several universities, such as our partnership with MIT, Stanford, and Columbia, among others to mention. We also have at the University of Mohammed VI Polytechnics this opportunity of providing the students the living lab spaces where they learn how to translate their knowledge and projects into practice to fill the gap between education and real life. And they are actually the ambassadors, they are the agents of a change that they are operating in the experimental farms together with farmers who are invited there, with the Green Energy Park, where it's from the name you can see, the interest is working on improving the sustainability and environmental let's say, sensibility of industry in Africa. The experimental mind as well, that is connected to Emin School, the digital learning lab that has helped not only UM6P, but many universities in Morocco during the pandemic to overcome the remote work teaching difficulties. Besides to those labs, that very innovative one, we have also Fab Lab and other ones that helping students to also move forward to create their own prototypes. Okay, so next. UM6P Innovation and Entrepreneurship Platform is thought by looking forward on how to valorize the research and education of outcomes and products that we have in the university. The coding school, for instance, the 1337 is one of those, let's say, components of the innovation and entrepreneurship platform. Explore program that I will bring to you how we develop it together with our partners from MIT. As well, what we do with the U funders. However, this platform is also a growing one. We are having more partnerships because of interest coming not only on a national level, but also at an African level. And at the center of this platform, there's Target that we have recently launched as Accelerator. And there are offers there. You can see numerically that we have services like to offer, but as well that we're already hosting 200 startups there, and there are 243 workstations. We still have places for other startups. And like we can have those discussions about those numbers further in the questions and answers. I will bring here to you one of the programs that we as UM6P brought as an example of how collaboration with the industry can create an acceleration program. The Impulse has been funded not only by UM6P, but also by OCP Group and OCP Africa, to help us in bringing international acceleration program that is called Mass Challenge to African startups. And many startups have been invited to 20-week acceleration program on campus, and they were coming from the field of agri-tech, biotech, mining tech. And that was, there was also a cash prize of $250,000 involved in that incubation program. Explorer today is another important corner of our innovation entrepreneurship platform, where we are having more than 90 teams today. Those teams are going through this program that is twin of MIT Sandbox. Mainly the experience of those teams who are startups is going in helping them coming from an idea till having a mature product with all the stages needed. Mainly is connected to mentoring and connecting the students with the related experts from one side. As well, there is application for fund that help the students who are launching the startup to cover the cost of launching it. However, UM6P Explorer is not covering only the students, but it's open to the community of UM6P where entrepreneurs can join. Coming to the exact role of universities, like incubators, in developing the ecosystem of universities when it comes to valorization of research work. The process of valorization of research work is not an easy one, and is a challenge that in Europe, Europe is one of like the continents that facing difficulties in that. So having technology transfer need a very long process that doesn't start only from the lab, but also it connects to the ecosystem. And that was the strategy that our platform works on, by not only providing all the tools needed as this valorization initiative that has started recently at UM6P, but it needs a kind of maturity in the ecosystem that allow the valorization to happen at different levels. The one researcher, the genius one, cannot bring his research to become a value to the industry or directly to the market. There should supposed to be a platform that help that process. We, in this experience, we were lucky to have the support from Erasmus Plus in bringing this experience and consolidated into provided an incubation program focused only in agriculture. And instead of having only programs such as Impulse that they come based on fund, we are having UM6P Incubator that we aim that it will be a long-term program that sustains after the fund finish of this project. This incubator is working on developing agriculture production in Morocco and as well looking for extending the services offered to Africa. We are working on it with our partners in the consortium, and of course, the most important aspect of it is increasing the number of startups in agriculture in particular, and increasing the quality of what they offer, and engage the farmers from other side in what are the innovation-driven technologies of agriculture. Here are only examples of startups that have again initiated to have success in the agriculture sector. One of them is Agri, which was funded by Faisal Shabawi and is a precision farming platform that helps maximizing return and reduce operating costs for smallholder farmers. Agri is one of the successful startups that is not only providing a service, but is going to providing know-how transfer to other farmers to help them also to create their own businesses. As well, you can see the AgriSafe technology, which is based on research, and that can be developed to maximize the safety and cost efficiency in providing biological and sustainable solutions. Those three examples, including Mayor, I hope that I'm pronouncing the name correctly, which connects small farmers with national and international customs, ensure product traceability, and providing extra professional services. Here is other examples.
Bisan, I think, is it okay if I ask you to drop the last three examples?
Yeah. So here are the other three startups, Ecosystem and I hope that I mentioned the name correctly, Into Monetries and Amendi Foods, that they are focused on nutrition and food innovation. Thank you for your attention, and feel free to ask questions about our innovation and entrepreneurship platform at UM6P.
Thank you very much. I think we will take the questions after we have had Christine's presentation and see how much time we have left. So Christine, please, will you continue?
I'm happy to do so. Thank you for having us. I will go ahead and start my presentation and try to catch us up a little bit because I do actually have to leave at the half hour. So I work for a national consortium here in the States called Together We Grow, and we work collaboratively across the consortium on a handful of shared interests. So our mission is to build a more skilled, diverse and inclusive workforce for the US food and agriculture industry. And we were really founded around this idea, bringing the industry together. Secretary Vilsack, our US Department of Agriculture Secretary under President Obama's administration, looking at the pressing challenges that we face. And we really felt that we're only going to be able to solve the issues ahead of us by working together. We felt that focusing on diversity is one of the key ways that we could address some of our biggest pressing challenges and drive innovation. And those challenges that we're looking at are the same ones that you all are. We were looking at the increase in water demand, the increase in demand for feeding a rapidly growing global population, and also really looking at this connection into health and the health of our human populations, as well as our bio and animal populations, and really feeling that we have some very pressing challenges in the short term and certainly in the long term that require us to come together. We're focusing on diversity because we know that more diverse teams are more profitable, more innovative, they generate more solutions to any given problem, and they're more objective and careful when discussing facts. So when we're thinking about that kind of entrepreneurial mindset and the ways that we drive innovation, the themes that you've been talking about throughout these 2 days together, we know that bringing diverse skill sets and diverse mindsets to the table is one of the key ways that we do that. So our consortium is about 50 organizations. 20 or so of them are big multinational food and agribusiness companies. So we have some consumer product group companies who make butter and mac and cheese, and a lot who focus more on inputs, fertilizers, grain processing, those kinds of activities. On our higher education side, we are primarily focused on our land grant university system, and we're really thrilled that we also have representation from some of our historically Black colleges and universities, our tribal colleges, and our Hispanic serving institutions across the United States. And then we also work with a lot of governmental and NGO partners. Ebony Weber, who you're going to hear from in the next session, is with an organization called Manners, and we have the joy of getting to work together as well. On our NGO side, a lot of our organizations are focused on engaging youth specifically, either in a K-12 setting or in that kind of leadership development, both in high school and post-secondary university and higher education activities. So broadly speaking, our activities are really focused on building a more skilled, diverse, and inclusive workforce. And what that means is that we share best practices as organizations together, that we sponsor research that benefits us collectively. We invest in pilots and we scale those that seem effective and promising. And so related to the topic at hand today, there are a few things that I wanted to just dig in on a little bit more specifically. So the question for my section was learning institutions as places for nurturing talent and building lifelong skills. And what I wanted to share was some of the thematic areas that we are hearing across the United States around these topics. And in another instance, I think we could lift up more specific examples of how those ideas are getting brought to life. But in the interest of time today, I'll stick at the kind of high-level thematic areas. So the three things that I feel like we're really responding to right now that our universities, our NGOs, and our industry are all partnering around are the changing needs of students. They're asking us to operate differently than we have in the past right now. The reality of industry is different than it has been. The level of change is rapid and accelerating and will not stop. And also the way that we're incubating our early pipeline efforts through our universities and higher education institutions. So what we're hearing from students broadly across the board are that our students are seeking more multicultural skills. They know that to drive innovation, to have that entrepreneurial mindset, to be able to respond to the challenges that they see everywhere, that they need to be equipped to be on teams with a diversity of perspective. And so they are asking us to get better at training them around those soft skills. The second is really making sure that we're aligning our training programs and then the careers that these students have the opportunity to pursue with careers with purpose, that they really want to create impact. They want to be part of change. They don't want to be sitting on the sideline. All of those things definitely relate to the kind of entrepreneurial mindset that we're talking about as well. And then they really want us to be approaching this work with a social justice lens. They recognize, particularly in the food and agriculture system, that we have inequities all along the road, and they really want us to be bringing that into the fold about how we're educating them, how we're approaching our work, how we are creating outcomes. The second push that we're getting is for universities to adapt. So they're asking our university partners to be responsible for fostering cultures of inclusion on campus, for examining hiring practices and training faculty and student advisors with the goal of trying to increase diversity and a sense of belonging for our students across the board. What we're hearing from our industry partners is that industry is changing so rapidly. The rate of change, the rate of innovation, the rate of adoption of new technologies, rewriting how we do work, what that work looks like is changing incredibly rapidly. And so regardless of the degree, what we're hearing from students is that, or what we're hearing from industry is that students will need to be adaptable, they will need to be proficient in change management, and they will need to be entrepreneurial no matter their role coming out of our higher education systems. And so regardless of the role, those are skills that we need to be training our young people for, that the jobs they start out in will not be the jobs that they end up in. And so the second bullet here, that continual building of new technical skills, is something we'll also have to be realistic about embracing, which means that our universities are probably not static. I went there, I got a degree, and now I'm good, but a place where we might have to continually be driving that connection so that we're fostering new skills. The soft skills development, or that 21st century skills that we talked about, is really huge. So how to be a good communicator, how to have emotional intelligence, how to be able to work on a team where you're getting a lot of input and you're iterating and people are able to participate and push your assumptions. And then the ability to work on diverse teams. And then I would also just say, broadly speaking, to sort of close this out, that the efforts we're really hearing across the board are folks engaging in include focusing really heavily on applied STEM opportunities, problem-based learning, so really bringing whatever the topic is to life in a hands-on applied way. We're also seeing a lot of design challenges, maker spaces, places to drive innovation, as well as efforts to develop identity at an individual level so that people understand themselves and then therefore are more adept in being able to flesh out their soft skills to be able to have multicultural mindsets and be on more diverse teams. And I'm happy to answer any questions as well. And I will have to jump off. I'm sorry for another meeting. So thank you for having me. And please feel free to email me if you have any questions.
Thank you very much to both of you. This was a very insightful presentations and very exciting initiatives. I'm very impressed by the things that the what are you called? Sorry, UM6P, the setup that you have there, that seems very impressive and well organized. And I'm very impressed by the scale of your partnership, Christine, and the kind of the scale and magnitude of what you're doing. In terms of, I have one small question just to clarify. Because I think, Bisan, in your presentation, it's pretty clear what the means are, what you actually do. But Christine, could you elaborate a little on what are the modalities of how you reach these objectives that you specified in your presentations? What do you actually do in across the or together with the universities to reach, for example, if you focus on these incubation activities, how do you support that or foster that? Did we lose Christine?
Yeah, I think she had to leave. So she left the
she had to leave fast. Okay, then that question have to hang in the air. But maybe I expect we get the contact info and so on, so we can get in contact. So I think we have one question before we pass on the time the service to somebody else in the next session, also the moderator in the next session. So if somebody have a question, Peter, you came on with your camera with us because you had a question.
No, I guess I have to participate to the next session.
Okay.
And speak
nice
there.
To see you,
Sorry.
Peter.
I had some issues connecting, so I'm totally out of context here. Sorry, don't do that.
But you can
no problem.
Maybe I can just comment on questions that I received on the direct. So I have received many questions on the direct messages.
Yeah, okay, yes.
Many of them like asking how they can reach out to participate in the programs that I have shared. Maybe I did not make it that clear. We are presenting all that to you here. It was like very short time to present all those programs because we want to use this platform to tell you it's UM6P Innovation Entrepreneurship Platform is open not only for Moroccan, is open for African participants and also to the world. So please, if you are interested to joining our incubation programs, our acceleration ones, if you have ideas you want to develop, you need just to contact us. Feel free to contact me personally using my email. It's exactly like my name, or reach me through LinkedIn, or just writing to our page on LinkedIn as Innovation Entrepreneurship Lab. I see that you asked me how you can reach us. You can follow also through UM6P website all the programs that we are offering. If I can just give a conclusion here, like it's like universities, not only ours, they have on the shelf innovation projects that are not yet developed, and our duty and our role is to help each researcher that he believes in the value of they develop, to bring it to the market, to the field, to who can bring it forward to become like applied or valuable researcher to develop our community, especially in the African context. I see Maria Sassi wanna ask questions.
Thank you very much, Bisan. And I think we will stop the session here and pass the word on to Florence. I think she is the next moderator, Florence Kara from National University of Agriculture in Benin. Florence, are you ready to take over? No, Florence?
Hello.
Oh, there you are, Florence. Maybe the connection is not that good.
Flora.
Flora. Sorry, Flora.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, then I will leave you and say thank you for participating in the first session, and I'll pass on the word to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar once more. Now we are going to start with the 5th session, which is dedicated to experience from higher education institution and academic network working on the development of Incubator to promote agripreneurship. For this session, I received for you Dr. Augustine Aoji from University of Abomey-Calavi, Mr. Peter Glicker from Agri Food Venture, and Mrs. Ebony Weber from National Society for Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resource, and Related Science. So now we will directly start with Dr. Augustine Aoji. So, Dr. Augustine Aoji is an agricultural economist, and he is associate professor at the Faculty of Agricultural Science of University of Abomey-Calavi in Benin. He teaches and perform research on agricultural value chain analysis, food security, agricultural labor economics, economics of agricultural production. He has valuable experience in monitoring, evaluation, and learning of project program, experience capitalization and project management. He is driven by success and passion to influence change that can lead to improvement in social outcome in the community. And this particularly among marginalized people. Dr. Aoji holds a PhD in agricultural economics from University of Abomey-Calavi. Today, he is going to talk about incubator experience in relation to University of Abomey-Calavi to promote agricultural entrepreneurship. Dr. Aoji, thanks for accepting to talk to us. It's over to you.
Okay, thank you, Flora, for introducing me. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be part of this session and sharing with you my small experience on entrepreneurship incubation in agribusiness at the University of Abomey-Calavi. My presentation will follow four main points. First of all, I will start with the history of the incubator and then the mission and the targeted audience. The third point will be the presentation of the incubation process followed by the incubator, and then I will finish by the key achievement, but also the challenge faced by the incubator. So in terms of history, the business incubator of the University of Abomey-Calavi, namely PRC Startup Valley, was unveiled in 1914. And this stemmed from an increased awareness of the necessity to address the challenge of the transition of youth from the university to the labor market in the context of high youth unemployment. And the paradigm is that we can use entrepreneurship to tackle to some extent youth unemployment. So the mission of the incubator is then to support university graduates in the creation of innovative business with high potential for decent job. So the other mission of the incubator is to support the dissemination of entrepreneurship culture among the university community. So we are trying to integrate entrepreneurship teaching in most of our curricula. But the audience of the incubator is not limited to the graduate of our university. The incubator also supports graduates from the National University of Agriculture, the University of Parakou, but also trying to support the graduate of agriculture, technical and vocational. Business represents about 40% of the business project support, but they also work on other areas like ICT, renewable energy, and other services. The incubation process starts with the recruitment. And here the particularity is that they select team and not individuals. So teams of 3 to 4 members apply based on the competitive idea. And then they can follow a culture. And this is the end of the recruitment phase. There are 3 other phases, namely pre-incubation during 8 months, where they are capacitated in business projects. They also have the opportunity to complete internship and then present their prototype. And this end by kind of support in fundraising in order to start the business effectively. The next step is the incubation during 2 years, and it includes business formalization, investments, start recruiting, and a kind of monitoring from the incubator. The post-incubation is for a duration of 12 months when the incubator follows already established business and prepare them to exit from the incubator. As achievement today, the USA Startup Valley happened to support more than 1,000 graduate crises. And in terms of impact, they have documented about 1,000 of direct jobs. And at institutional level, the incubator has resulted in increased awareness of the necessity to include entrepreneurship in all we do at the university, especially as a means to address to some extent youth unemployment. The main challenge is related to funding and sustainability of the business model, because so far the incubator depends on external funding, fundraising. So the youth themselves are not able to pay for the service they are receiving, and this is the main challenge for sustainability. So thank you for your kind attention. Your comment and the question are highly welcome. Thank you, Flora.
Thank you, Dr. Aoji. I would like to recall that if you have any question, you can write down in the chat and the presenter or the orator will be looking at it. Thank you for Dr. Aoji for talking about the incubation process at University of Abomey-Calavi. We'll talk about recruitment as part of the process, pre-incubation for about 8 months, incubation for about 24 months, and among the key achievements that we have in that incubation, from start to now, there are many graduates, more than 1,000 graduates that have already benefited from this process, and it has created about 1,000 jobs. And we have all those results, but we also have some challenge to make this process sustainable. So thank you very much for sharing this experience. I think people will ask questions if they have. Now is the time to receive Mr. Peter Krieger. Mr. Peter Krieger is the managing partner and founder of Agri Food Venture. He's also the founder and chairman of Agri Food Tech Italia. He is also the chief executive officer at Execute, and is not finished, the chief executive officer and managing director at Startup Bootcamp Food Tech. You see that he's fully in entrepreneurship and business. He was the external expert at Research Executive Agency in company European Commission in Belgium. He has very wide experience as entrepreneur, investor, executive manager, and board member in the digital and IT industries. His research area of expertise includes public speaking, strategy, journalism, and technology transfer, and digital and startup policy. Mr. Peter Krieger holds an MSc in physics from Università degli Studi di Roma. Is a very good exercise for me to read this. La Sapienza in Italy. Mr. Peter Krieger, we are more than happy to have you here. We are very happy that you accept to talk to us because you are fully in the practice. So I'm very delighted to give you the floor to share experience on Agri Food Venture, CEO, Startup Bootcamp, and any other that I have cited before. Over to you, Mr. Peter.
Oh, hello. Thanks for this very lengthy introduction. I'm just really an entrepreneur, which became an investor over time. And my background is really in technology. I have an education as a theoretical physicist, actually, but I started doing my first startups in the late 90s during the dot-com boom era, and really my main expertise is on knowing how startups develop, especially tech startups. And over the last, let's say 8 years, I've been especially focusing on the agri-food tech space, which is of course a space which is extremely interesting due to its huge potential. And so investing and supporting startups that operate in the agri-food space, but always with a strong sort of technological component. One of the operations that I've managed in this space is an accelerator called Startup Bootcamp Food Tech, an accelerator that international accelerator that we launched back in 2016. Over the course of 3 years, we invested in 25 companies from as far east as Indonesia to as far west as the Silicon Valley. I say east and west because I'm based in Rome. We're based in Rome, Italy. And so that's, let's say, our perspective of the world. And unfortunately, we didn't invest in any startup from Africa, although we saw some very interesting ones in Eastern Africa and Western Africa, also in South Africa, also in Northern Africa, literally from all across the continent. So my experience, of course, is not really that of an incubator. I have more the experience of an accelerator. And I don't know if it is clear what the difference is. Today, that difference is probably not so clear. A few years ago, you would have said that the main difference between an incubator and an accelerator was that an accelerator would take equity into a startup and so share the risk with a startup, whereas an incubator was more of an organization incubating, supporting, providing the services to build the company and to help the company, move its first steps. So in this respect, very different kind of business models for incubators and accelerators. Accelerators really remunerating themselves out of equity, so out of whatever growth the company would go through in the future, and therefore a model that is intrinsically capital efficient, focused on capital efficiency. So give the money, provide the support, but just that limited support that is needed for the company to grow. And then once you did that, hope that it goes for the best and let just the company go. In fact, in a certain sense, you could say that the accelerators, modus operandi, was at least that of stripping as much services as possible, just focusing those really, really core basic elements of support that you believe would help the company to grow. Because of course, you don't want to spend a lot of money in supporting the teams because you're not getting paid for it. The only payment that you're receiving is equity. And so equity is the only way in which you can actually monetize. On the other hand, an incubator, traditionally, more of kind of a service-driven model, whether sponsored by a government, by a corporation, or by the startups themselves. In a certain sense, incubator has this model of stacking services one on top of the other. And you could say, you could argue that there was a bit of a conflict of interest. Why did I say in the past? Because things have changed a lot over the last few years. There's been an explosion globally of organizations that support startups. And often the border between what is an accelerator, what is an incubator has really started sort of becoming way more blurred. And in addition to that, you've got all new kinds of organizations like startup factories, startup foundries that are also in this kind of business of supporting teams in their initial stages of development. Now, my experience, of course, as I said, I'm in an entrepreneur and an investor as a way of thinking. And so my approach is very much oriented into seeing companies that can grow very fast and potentially maybe in 7 or 10 years return something, some good return on the investment that I made. And of course, this is very different from what you normally see in incubators. So I think this is an important difference. I think I see a lot of incubators that want to kind of support startups to go in these kind of processes of hyper growth. And I think that it's very important to really look at, what are key also models of operating that can be functional to that. But of course, there are a lot of incubators that are not interested in hyper growth. They're basically interested in supporting the development of sustainable SMEs that can develop in a robust way, develop labor, and so on. And this is also a very legitimate way of operating. One final notice, because I think I have about a minute or so. We're operating in a space, the agri-food space, which has become extremely interesting. Now, whether you are more focused on supporting SMEs or whether you're interested in startups that can generate very strong growth, I think this is a very important thing to note. I don't know if everyone is aware, but the amount of venture capital that is being poured today in this sector, the agri-food space, let's call it the agri-food tech space, is really remarkable. I remember when we started a few years ago, this was a very, very minor area of investment for venture capitalists. This has changed dramatically over the last few years. Last year, the year of the pandemic, we saw an increase in venture capital invested in the space of above 30%. That's against a global increase of venture capital expenditure of just 4%. A tremendous interest in the sector. And this year, in the first 6 months, we already saw something like $26 billion invested. This is an enormous amount of money. Just to give you the term of comparison, last year, 30 billion represent 10% of total global VC expenditure. It's a huge number, which signifies the fact that there is a lot of interest coming in the sector. It's basically for 3 reasons. The first one is that the agri-food space, although it probably represents the greatest chunk of the economy, something between 20 and 40% of an economy, depends on how you count and where you count. But at the same time, it has been the market that has been least disrupted by emerging technologies. And now this wave of technology is coming. And at the same time, it's coming at the moment when there is huge pressure for various reasons, climate change not being the least, on the business models of producers, of consumers, and so on. The other reason, of course, is ESG. There's increasing awareness that developing businesses that are impactful is not just something that is good to do, but it's also a major opportunity. Today, we see increasing regulation coming into the agri-food space, which of course puts some tremendous stress on the players which are already operating there, especially our incumbents, which require new technologies, new solutions to make their business profitable again. And there's only one way you can do that. You have to develop technologies that can support more sustainable practices and at the same time provide a higher return to the operations of the players in the industry. And third, not least, the pandemic itself. The pandemic has shown that the agri-food system has a number of very strong failures, both in terms of the supply chains, but also in terms of how we consume, the security, health, hygiene of what we consume, and so on. So the pandemic, in this sense, is also becoming a driver of huge transformation. Now, I went way beyond my time. I hope you know, my little contribution can be of inspiration to any one of you guys. And of course, I'm happy to take any questions at the end of the session.
Thank you, Peter. This was great. This was very, very interesting. And I think you already have some questions in the chat. We will come back to that. We were really attracted by your presentation, talking about difference between accelerator and incubator, which was at the beginning really different, but now the difference is being reduced somehow. We also talk about the opportunity that represent the agri-food space, the agri-food sector, and you even gave some figures about the amount of billion it is having from last year to this year, and stretch that as a big opportunity to focus on. So before we come back to the question, I will proceed with our third speaker. Our third speaker is Our third speaker is Mrs. Ebony Weber. Mrs. Ebony Weber is the Chief Operation Officer for the National Society for Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resource and Related Science. She strives daily to transform the National Society into a nationally recognized name, as well as developing young minority students into future leaders. Mrs. Ebony focuses on developing strategic partnership and building collaborative teams. She drives innovation and growth at the Minority in Agriculture, Natural Resource and Related Science. And she does this through several programs that connect students and professionals in academia, government, nonprofit, and private industries. Mrs. Ebony is graduated as the top student in the Mathematics and Computer Science department. She holds a BSc in Computer Science from Stillman College in the United States. And she also holds an MSc in Business Administration and a certification in Technology Management, and both from the University of Phoenix in the United States. We are very delighted to receive Mrs. Ebony in this session, where she will talk on developing and delivering innovative programs that can enhance leadership, entrepreneurship, and positive youth development. Over to you, Mrs. Ebony, for your talk. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. And I just want to make sure that you can hear me okay. My internet is a little unstable.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go on.
Great. Okay, thank you. So I want to break it up a little bit and show you guys a video first of one of our major events, and then I'll come back to the presentation just to break it up a little bit. Great. I wanted to just show you all that video to kind of give some perspective on one of the biggest programs that we lead as an organization, helping to bring youth into the agriculture industry by way of through their collegiate chapters, through high school, or as professional members in the organization. So now for the presentation. So at Manners, we are changing the face of agriculture by linking hands around the world. And for us, that means infusing more diverse faces within the industry. And we do this through collaborations. Kristen mentioned, so working with organizations such as those NGOs, federal and state government, as well as private industry, are our national partners that help us place students into these various career pathways. Today, just talking about developing and delivering innovative programs that enhance leadership, entrepreneurship, and positive youth development. That's what Manners does as an organization. That is our mission, really, in terms of how we implement a lot of our programs. And so our organization was founded at Michigan State University by college students, really in an effort to provide support and mentorship to students who were underrepresented in the industry. These students were suffering or facing challenges in terms of finding ways to advance their research, finding job opportunities, networking within the space, just because they didn't have a lot of the networks that the majority students, Caucasian students in the United States had. So the organization was founded really to support the network and development and exposure of underrepresented youth to the fields of food, agriculture, and natural resources. And so what is our organization overview? Really, at Manners, as I mentioned before, we're just really about providing the industry with a diverse pool of talented leaders. One of the things we talk about in Manners is the Manners journey. And a lot of these stories are all different, but there's one theme that is the same across all of the stories: is access leads to success. And so we know that if we're providing accessibility to our students to be able to access these programs, access college curriculum, access curriculum through their K through 12 programs, that we know it leads to students wanting to pursue these careers and ultimately being successful in the industry. And so our mission at Manners is to empower individuals of diverse backgrounds to lead them to rewarding economic values, accomplishment, and advancement. And we know this is all possible through agriculture, and it is the backbone of each industry in the states, or every state in the industry. This is the agriculture is the backbone for all of our economies. And our vision is to be the premier worldwide organization dedicated to career development of diverse, highly skilled members. And so by being here at Reform is definitely our way of having a way of expanding our messaging, expanding opportunities beyond the states to hopefully partner with universities and organizations globally going forward. And so what is our essence? Our essence is professional, engaging, and diverse. Those are the students we work with. That is the personality of the organization, is that it's all about that leadership, professional development. It's all about how you be engaged in what you're doing, networking, and then again, just promoting the diversity across representation, ethnicity, gender. And for us, it's those students who are first generation college students as well. And so as an organization, we are a 501c3 organization. We're based in Atlanta, Georgia, and there are a number of ways that our members are able to be involved, whether they're serving in leadership capacities in the organization or a part of our advisory board, which is typically made up of partners from government, academia, and industry organizations that really have their pulse or their hand on the pulse of what's going on in the industry and helping to guide the organization in terms of what strategic items should we be focused on and how do we want to grow the organization going forward. And so we talk about those innovative programs. Here you can see what we provide as a typical journey of from beginning in high school, which is the junior Manners, all the way through professionalism. So just focusing a lot on career awareness and readiness, providing scholarships to students. Mentorship is a big thing for students. It's hard to be something you've never seen. And so for us, representation is important in terms of making sure youth have positive experiences and positive role models that they can ask questions to see how they can find themselves in these various career pathways. And as you progress forward from undergraduate to graduate to took beyond college, you can see the different areas that we tend to focus on, with culture competencies being a big part, especially here in the States where it's not as diverse as we would like to be. Then making sure that our students know the environments that they're going into, making sure that they have the skill sets and the tools they need to thrive and survive. And also vice versa, working with our partners to make sure that they're creating more inclusive cultures and environments in their institutions and organizations. Our organization currently has over 2,000 active members. These active members are primarily college students, so graduate and undergraduate. About 15% of them are professionals. So those are professionals that are serving in key roles in industry. So whether that's HR, talent acquisition, business development, or professors, academic deans, faculty at universities. We're located in 39 states and Puerto Rico, and we have about 65 chapters established at colleges and universities across the country. And for us, we have more than 75 STEM related disciplines, and those are all related to agriculture. So everything from animal science, agriculture, business, all the way to zoology and everything in between, because we recognize that everything is agriculture and every major almost can be applied to the agriculture industry. So we do our part, and that's where the related sciences and manners come in, is to try to help every student see whether they're directly or indirectly tied to agriculture, there is a career and a place for them here in the industry. Some of the exciting programs and things that we have a Manners Include strategy, which is our inclusion, diversity, and equity strategy, where we're really just doing audits and assessment on what is the state of the industry. You know, what are the diversity challenges within the industry, and how can Manners help support our industry partners and academic universities to reach these underrepresented youth who we're all trying to get into the fold and recruit into this ag industry, as we know there's a war on talent. So outside of ag industry, the tech industry, the transportation industry, engineering, all want diverse, credible students. And so there is a war on talent, and we have to make sure that we're selling agriculture as one of the key careers, or first choice careers as we call them. And you can see there are a number of internship and scholarship programs, as well as we recognize these two components are very critical in ensuring the success of students, not only helping them gain critical hands-on skills in terms of building towards their career, but also scholarship and monetary support to help further their academic matriculation as well. So what are those partner benefits of being in Manners, and how do we kind of get our youth involved? So one is providing that leadership and career development. So our program starts in high school, and from high school and that early exposure, we navigate and hopefully guide those students into the 65 university chapter programs that we have, because a lot of times for our students that may find themselves interested in agriculture is knowing where to go to school to kind of follow up on these majors. So making sure that we can help guide them into one of the land grant universities that could support their major and career interests. Also through our organization, they're gaining those sustainable career connections, so academia, government, and industry. So they have a variety of sectors that they have access to. They have access to those life science mentors from these organizations. So both high school, there's peer-to-peer mentoring from the college students to the high school students, since they're closer in age and can really maybe ask some of those questions that may be burning inside of those youth. And then also from professionals to students. By being active in our programs, students have access to scholarships and internships. Again, these are direct pathways that eventually turn into full-time career opportunities. Internships are typically here in the United States the best, the easiest way in terms of kind of getting your foot in the door at any number of these organizations. And then lastly, we are really big on the culture and career awareness, given that we are somewhat of a melting pot of minorities coming from all different ethnicities, is that we learn by doing, and we learn by amplifying the voices of those other underrepresented groups within the various ethnicities here. And so by being involved and learning from others, our students have a broader access and array of exposure to various cultures beyond just their own. Here is just a list of some of our partners. As you can see, we have many industry partners involved with Manners, as well as some.
Excuse me, can we move to conclusion? Can we move to conclusion?
I'm sorry. Did I lose you all?
No, we're here. We are here.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. And so these are a number of our.
Are you almost done? Can we?
Yes, this is the last slide.
Okay.
And so I have my information here. If you all are interested in learning more about the organization, there's the website there, as well as my contact email.
Okay, thank you. Go on. Thank you very much, Mrs. Ebony. It was very insightful to see how the institution is working, providing industries with leaders, and also one of the top organizations is planned that it become a top organization in career development. We see that they are joining with every category of the population, the junior, the graduate, the undergraduate, and also the professional, which is really great. And we see that students are in majority working with you, which is really interesting. And you have national chapter in many, many countries. That is really great. So now we still have like 1 minute or something. I would like to give the floor to Peter, if he is still around, to answer 1 or 2 questions that are all addressed to him. One of the questions is related to, sorry. There's one question which says, I read, how likely is it that a university can successfully organize and manage an accelerator organization? There's some good example on how to organize it. And before that, there was another question, or just after that, there was another question also addressed to Peter. Would you say that an accelerator is upstream of an incubator? So please, Peter, can you in 1 minute try to answer the question so that we start the second question, the next session? Thank you.
There are no easy answers, I would say there. So whether an accelerator is kind of upstream or downstream, an incubator. I mean, yes, we've seen some startups that have gone through incubation, then go through acceleration. But I wouldn't say this is a typical path. I think most times, really, what an incubator and accelerator are doing are very different. So they really address different needs of a company. An incubator, as we said, is when a team really requires some pretty structured support. It can be, you could say, ordinary entrepreneurial support, but it can be more specific. You can have accelerators that are specialized in biotech tech transfer. And so they bring the kind of expertise that is required to highly technical teams to maybe prototype their product and so on. On the other hand, you may have accelerators with teams that have already developed their product. They are already pretty capable of understanding what it means to run a business, but maybe they need that accelerator to access some strategic partners in the development of their company. So I think luckily, the good thing is that the needs are so diverse, and organizations are, positioning themselves and offering today a very varied, framework of services that can support the growth of companies. I think that the last time I saw this was on a report by Forward Fooding, which is an organization that keeps track of the agri-food tech ecosystem. They were counting something like 230 organizations, accelerators, incubators, startup factories that are supporting companies in the agri-food space. I think this is a great opportunity to think beyond very schematic, say, subdivisions of roles, but thinking truly as an ecosystem which is made of very diverse needs and by converse, expertise that can be deployed to help companies. The other question was regarding, I think it was here. Yeah, how likely is it that? Yes, he does. How likely is it that the university can successfully organize and manage an accelerator organization? So I think one of the big divides that we still see is that it is very challenging for universities to, bring that real world entrepreneurial experience. Sometimes you have some very good programs that help companies to grow, whether to spin off or whether simply to, enable alumni to emerge. But I think that probably one of the things where accelerators, where you'll see, really something that kind of characterizes what an accelerator is the presence of people with very, very strong real world experience of entrepreneurial development. And so I still kind of struggle to see academic programs that really can, help a team, how can I say, accelerate the learning curve of what it means for an individual to become an entrepreneur. Probably, look, there is not such a cool way to do so, and the only way is for a guy to go out there in the market, expose himself and learn. But I would say that normally in accelerators, you have a bit more awareness of this. And if a university wants to develop an accelerator program, this is probably the biggest challenge. I mean, how to attract people that have really went through the process of, developing a company, going to market, developing it in a sustainable, successful way, maybe do that several times, or maybe even be specialized on one part of the, it could be the part where you are focusing more on the product market fit, it could be the part where you focus more on the scale up. I think that's the big challenge for academic institutions.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all speakers, Dr. Aoji, Mr. Peter, and Mrs. Ebony. My name is Flora Shadare. I am Associate Professor at National University of Agriculture in Benin, and I was really happy to moderate this session. Now I will give the floor for the next session to Mr. Okalane Emmanuel from the forum. Over to you, Emmanuel. Thank you very much, Missy.
Thank you so much. We'll first go for the video and then we'll come back. And well done, Flora, and all the presenters of the previous session.
The way we did agriculture, it was terrible to be hungry and having to go to school with hunger. I started developing my own technologies at an age of 14 years, whereby I had to transform the knowledge I had gained in science to do agriculture, proper organized agriculture. If I didn't come up with new ways, then hunger will strike again and will be suffering. My name is Gabriel Mahindo Kwendo. We have a company called Comrade Dairy and Food Enterprises, fully registered, fully inspected, fully in the market. And we thank God for that. Looking at the statistics, dairy products are the most demanded at a growth rate of about 7% compared to other agricultural commodities in the country now. So we are positioning ourselves to tap into that market.
We find that in most African countries, the young people they graduate from universities, from colleges, they go out there looking for white-collar jobs, and yet they're not there. So it is important for us to be able to change the mindset that instead of them maybe training for them to get employment, they can be able to train for them to employ themselves and even be able to employ others.
I feel proud of myself. I feel that I've achieved something great for the family. I use the skills I got. And if we have maybe 100 or thousands of like me, then that's a significant disruption that is necessary to drive our economies forward. In front of us is a piece of land acquired by Comrade Dairy and Food Enterprise. It's just an expansion place for the enterprise. We are going to engage much more farmers and much more people along the dairy value chain. Currently, we have eight people that are working directly with us. We have engaged about 55 farmers who we collect milk from them on a day-to-day basis. You can meet this Pastor John, and this is his lovely wife. Now, as of Comrade Dairy, they are partners with us. They are supplying us the basic need, that is the raw milk, that is very necessary for our production.
I can say he's been a huge blessing. I'm always very grateful because he also pays me on time. He does his work very well. I hope that maybe in this area, he'll be able to capture a bigger market.
So I could not have imagined that that it could have come this far, but with the right collaborations, seeking the right people to work along with, we have been able to marshal ourselves, to marshal the resources that we have, to seek the opportunities, to go for the opportunities that we see either in the university or beyond the university.
We have been able to build their capacity in terms of different types of training for them to be able to run their enterprises better. We've been able to provide mentorship to them and also link them to the market. Really nice. And what we have seen is that the students have the passion to be entrepreneurs.
I think we are going to drive this country forward here because we have the energy, we have the passion, and we have the skills that are required for driving the agricultural sector in the continent.
Yeah, thank you so much, and welcome back, everyone, from the very engaging sessions that we've had, and very encouraging video as well. Motivation for more young people to be in agri entrepreneurship. Now we are going to the final lap to bring this conference to a close. So my name is Emmanuel Okalany. I'll take you through the last session, and we have a great lineup of 3 speakers who will be talking to us after we've heard about university experiences and in incubation and acceleration. We would like to hear perspectives from other stakeholders who have experience in facilitating entrepreneurship, giving us a piece of advice on how we can make this process better at the universities. So we have 3 speakers with us. Our first speaker is going to be Elton Matisse. He's a business coach and a strategic management consultant from Zimbabwe, and he's a chief executive officer of an organization called Paradigm. I'll not talk much about him, but he has a wide experience in business coaching, and he's going to speak to us about how universities can mobilize and work very closely with private sector to support building of viable youth-led agri-enterprises in the continent. I will not speak a lot more about him, but Elton will speak about his experience and sharing with us some views on how that will, how universities can make this a more profitable and impactful venture. Over to you, Elton.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you so much. I will not labor much on my brief. I think it's already been done. I am a Zimbabwean who fell in love with Uganda, but it's all Africa. And hopefully we can open up the borders so that there's free movement of people and goods. But my passion really is in Africa. The passion is simple. How do we scale up Africa? And we need to do that through business re-education. The only channel that we have is through the re-education. That's the only way we can unleash self-reliance on the continent and unleash economic abundance. And the question that I have, and I have a few minutes for this, is how can universities mobilize and work with the private sector to support building viable youth-led agri-enterprises in Africa? I move the length and breadth of the continent. I speak to people online and offline, really about these issues which I'm passionate about. There's no doubt that agriculture, an agro-industrial approach, holds the keys to broad-based economic empowerment. According to Akinwumi Adesina, he says, if we don't reverse the current trend, our current import bill as a continent is 35 billion. If we don't reverse this trend, by 2025, we will have an import bill of $100 billion. That's in the Feed Africa strategy. Yet, we have 70% of the arable land on the continent. We're able to feed ourselves if we can start moving in an organized manner, but more importantly, we can feed the world and provide the food that is needed as we have this population dividend. I want to speak about three things today with the few minutes that I've been given. I want to speak about three forms of capital in terms of how private sector and academia can be a catalyst. The first form of capital is obviously the intellectual capital. The second one, I want to speak about relational capital. And lastly, I will speak about financial capital. The link between academia and business, whether you go to Silicon Valley, whether you go to the Netherlands, whether you go to India and start interrogating how people have moved out of poverty in less than a decade, you start understanding the power and value of academic institutions, of the link between academia and industry or the private sector. The first one is research. What do we need to grow? How do we need to organize ourselves? How do we need to organize our land? Because unless we have intellectual capitalism leading the charge, not the political elite, we are going to be left behind and we will have a shortage of food, we'll have food security matters. So we need research-driven approaches in terms of what to grow, in terms of the quality of seeds that can harness optimal production in the soils of Africa. We need to interrogate the problem. Where is the problem? Is it primary production? Is it the failure to add value to our primary goods? Is it the market organization? I feel that in terms of academia and the private sector coming together, we can more scientifically interrogate the problem and the opportunity. How do we reverse this import bill of 100 billion? How do we take advantage of this opportunity that we have right now? The other issue where the contribution can be made well is the area of competitiveness and skilling. According to Professor Michael Porter, how does a country advance? Because we're interested in economic abundance. An economy advances when it raises the productivity in terms of the skill set that the citizens have. So if I am able, as a Zimbabwean or as an African, to contribute more on the land, whether I'm processing that good, whether I am producing high-value crops that can be consumed by the Tesco's of this world or global supermarkets, I would have gone a long way. The other area is skilling. What skills do we need? In every country where advances have been made, we see a very close link between research and what's happening on the farm, between research and what's happening in the marketplace. So I feel that universities, we need to go back and to the drawing board and start saying, how do we start re-educating? Whether they are short courses, whether they are degrees, whether they are diplomas, and start getting our people into mechanization and start getting our young people in terms of thinking through the skill sets that they need on the farm, that they need to make sure that this agro-industrial thrust that a lot of African governments are now getting into are harnessed to its maximum potential. The third piece under intellectual capital is that universities and also the private sector are custodians of the intellectual capacity that a nation needs. And when we speak about agriculture as a business, I want to ensure that when the young men go on the soil, when the young men are in the factory processing, when the young men and the women are out there looking for best deals, whether we're putting our products out in Dubai or the UAE or far afield China or America, that they are running it as a business. When you're running something as a business, not as a hobby or not as a mobile phone farmer, you start thinking about your strategy. Yes, I'm growing maize. Yes, I'm growing tomatoes. Yes, I'm growing potatoes. Yes, I'm growing blueberries, but how different am I? What's my strategy? How unique am I? Because a lot of commoditization happens. People have grown their tomatoes, people have grown their eggplant, people have grown their habanero pepper, and there's no market. There is a market, but there are middlemen in between. But imagine if we get people to understand that a business is about strategy, that uniqueness. A business is about getting your pricing right. A business is about understanding the promise you make in terms of this is my maize, these are my potatoes, these are my eggs. What can we do to make sure that we codify a logic, a strategic logic to make sure that your business is competitive? Because the challenge I see is not the production per se, it's also where the market is. And that brings me to my other form of capital. If we have intellectual capital and the research institutions and private sector are working closely together, then I need to go further and look at the relational capital. The universities and its staff and the private sector as a collective can organize markets for the young people. Where can we sell at a profit? Where can we sell competitively? I was speaking with chatting with the CEO of Nimbe Fresh Exports, and he pushes blueberries to Tesco in the UK, and that's a high value horticultural crop. Where are those markets? And can we interrogate by leveraging our relational capital as universities across the world, across the continent, and make sure that we have access to markets and we organize our quantities and are able to supply? If I am not wrong, I know that Uganda is failing to fulfill its demands to at least the UAE. They need avocados, they need coffee, they need a lot of produce that we're not able to push. So relational capital, getting the private sector and universities to leverage and look for where the markets are. The other subsector under relational capital is the issue of policy. Policy goes a long way in harnessing the power of the entrepreneurial zeal that the young people bring. But they come into the fold. They want to formalize their business. They register their company. They have a TIN number or tax identification number. Before you know it, the Uganda Revenue Authority or the Kenya Revenue Authority or the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority is knocking on the door. We need your taxes. When you know that an MTN can come into this country and get a runway for 5 years, how are we incentivizing these young people? Can the policymakers and the government institutions, the academia can be a voice to the voiceless, these young people as a collective, and we speak to them around the issue of harmonizing the policy frameworks to ensure that agriculture becomes an attractive one. If you tell me go to the village and start taking care of a 100-acre farm and there's no tax paid and these are the incentives that are going to be given, it goes a long way in giving that foundation and a good padding for anyone who's starting out in agriculture today. So policy and government relationships is something that as a collective we can harness. The other thing is global connections and partnerships. How has Netherlands managed to build a research capability that the entire world goes to them to look for quality hybrid seeds? 80% or so of the potato seed comes from the Netherlands. KFC is very fussy about the quality. You can't supply potatoes to KFC in Uganda, for instance, without it meeting a certain quality. The seeds are coming from the Netherlands. How has Netherlands, as a small, tiny place, managed to produce more per square meter? Can we find out what those research institutions are doing? How can we connect with those companies and academic institutions and bring the best seeds onto our soil and bring the best fertilizers onto our soil? There's a long way we can go. I know India has moved itself out of poverty within a decade because they have invested in research and development, because the private sector and academia has come together to ensure that these global partnerships are leveraged. Global partnerships are critical because we can tap into the intellectual capital of people who have gone before us. The last form of capital I would want to speak about is the financial capital. A lot of young people have a challenge accessing funding for just primary production. And I know governments across Africa are doing their best to do this. But I know in Uganda there's ACF, the Agricultural Credit Facility, there's UDB, but the processes are not harmonized. It intimidates some of these young people to put together a battery of requirements and go there and see that they're not being given the money that they need. So we need to come up with instruments that can allow us to organize finances for the young people who want to go into primary production. I want to do my chickens, I want to do my pigs, I want to grow my maize, and at least the financing instrument can come through. The other area where I think we can harness value is around post-harvest management and really funding that. What are we talking about? We're talking about storage facilities. We're talking about harvesting and handling to ensure that the coffee we are picking from that tree, that the potatoes we're putting on the table are processed well. Whatever it is we need to clean up is done well. There's need for funding there. And private sector with the banks, with the government, with the quasi-government institutions can come in handy to help that. The issue of processing as well. People are looking for factories to add value to their primary products. What can academia do? What can the private sector do in coming through and helping with the processing? In marketing, we speak simply about moving one product from one level of lower concentration to a level where the value can be harnessed. Why is it that it's less than $1 to buy a cup of coffee in Uganda when it's $3, $4 at Starbucks? Why is it that we have to receive Nescafe from Switzerland? What percentage of the value chain are we benefiting? So we need to move upstream in terms of the agricultural value chain and interrogate intellectually how we can move up. The last one is obviously a trade domino. When you speak about the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, being able to open the border so that Africa can start trading with itself. If we can harness the catalytic effect of the academia and private sector in leveraging intellectual capital and relational capital and financial capital, we can go a long way in transforming the agriculture entrepreneurs and start seeing our first millionaires and billionaires in the young people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I was about to stop you, but I was enjoying listening. That was heavy loaded. You know, while you were talking, I remember that during the climate conversations, there was this group of academics, and then I think during COVID as well, who put up an open letter, making their position with strong evidence to inform the negotiations that were going. And I remember that currently in Uganda, there was, I think, a team that did research on the lending rates. They showed that the profits, I think the percentage was about 15%, but the interest rate charged by the banks is about 24%. And that would actually shape policy and helping, in a way, the young people to access, or generally the SMEs to access capital that commensurate to the profits or profits that they obtain in the Ugandan market. So I think that was really heavy loaded, and I believe I'm looking forward for the academics who are here, that at some point you put out an open letter to the government of Kenya with your research proving that this is the interest rate or this is the best practice to grow entrepreneurship. I guess that will influence policy. Thank you so much, Elton, for that heavy loaded talk. I would encourage the participants to put out their questions if there is anything that is not clear on what Elton said, but I really thought it was very clear and heavy loaded, and that we need to benefit. Something that's sticking in my mind is, why are we importing seeds from Netherlands? Yet we have breeders here who could supply, scientists who could supply materials or planting materials to the agri-entrepreneurs in Uganda or Africa generally. But that's something to think about. Let's move to our next speaker. He's also an experienced entrepreneurial coach, and he's called Danny Jacobs. He's the CEO of Young Entrepreneurs from South Africa. And Jacobs, you would like to hear from you a bit more about what you're doing, but more so dwelling on how learning institutions can work with private sector to fund agripreneurship and innovation in business development. Based on your experience supporting young people, you are so passionate about young people entering into business. Based on that experience, what advice or suggestions would you make to the university stakeholders and young people who are here on how best they could attract funding from private sector? Over to you, Dan.
Yes, thank you so much for having me this afternoon, and to all the participants, good afternoon, good evening. It might be still morning somewhere, so good morning to all of those. Yes, Danny Jacobs here from Young Entrepreneurs. And I want to bring a different perspective this afternoon with regard to what we are talking about. In my previous life, I was heading up the commercial unit at one of the business schools in South Africa. And yes, I'm going to give you a South African perspective, but I do think that it applies to the majority of our African continent. The long and the short is, you must understand, and I wanted to take one step back with regard to our school system, our education, our higher education system, and this view that universities should generate, or as an output have entrepreneurs. And I'll get to the agri sector just now. The long and the short is, you must understand this, as while I was heading up the commercial unit at the business school, and I also founded a consulting company, I could see the seismic shifts happening in the world of work and business. I could see how the world of business is changing and how there were a total misalignment and a disconnect between what we teach in universities, the expectations from students, and what the world of work and business requires. So let me take another step back with regard to saying that on average, the problem is that we lack an entrepreneurial mindset, specifically from a South African perspective. We find that young people very often start businesses out of necessity and not out of choice. Entrepreneurship is not being promoted as an attractive career option. And given that, I founded Young Entrepreneurs, and we start very young. But long and short is this: our school system has got a flawed purpose. Everything boils down to subject choices, a bachelor's pass, and then access into higher education. Now, there's a total disconnect between industry and what we teach in our curriculums. And it will be totally wrong to think that our professors should teach entrepreneurship. The problem is our universities is driven by a subsidy formula. Universities in general are not being held accountable for the absorption rate into the workplace. And there's simply not being done enough for students for helping them to transition this or manage the transitioning from a jobs economy to a skills economy. And the thing is, in terms of this, it should be an intentional process. And the long and the short is this, without massive reforms, I see public universities, specifically in Africa for that matter, as eventually ending up serving only the poor and, in a sense, the marginalized. In a sense, also the marginalized. So the long and the short is universities. There's somebody. The long and the short is this, in terms of agriculture, let's look at agriculture for the moment. There's somebody on the line here.
Sorry, we request that.
Dominic, kindly mute your microphone. You are disorganizing the speaker.
I request the admin to mute him.
Dominic, kindly mute your microphone. You are causing interruption in the session flow.
Agree.
It's very inconsiderate.
David, maybe just mute him. David, I need you. Please mute Dominic.
Okay.
All right, there we go. All right, let's continue. With regard to the long and the short is in terms of, I think it's a mistake that we are making to think that universities per se should teach entrepreneurship. We need to redefine entrepreneurship, and I do think we get the packaging wrong. We teach business science, business theory, and business acumen, and we think we are teaching entrepreneurship. The long and the short is you must understand this, that the entrepreneurial mindset consists of attributes that are being instilled through repetitive experiential exposure, normally from a very young age. Our programs start as young as 4. Now, the only way for the universities to really, in terms of going into the agri space and generate more agri entrepreneurs, is private sector partnerships. I mean, there's absolutely no other way. We must also understand that universities, their primary objective would be to prepare students for the world of work and business. And the intentional drive towards universities should be to make students understand that the world of work has changed, the emergence of the freelance and the gig economy, and the fact that these students would very often need to venture into entrepreneurship. Now, universities are very well positioned from a research perspective. And the pivotal point for universities would be in terms of their knowledge transfer offices. So universities generate intellectual property. The problem is with these intellectual properties, it very often ends up in research proposals or research papers, whatever the case may be. And what we need to do is, in terms of private-public partnerships, is if you want to generate more agribusinesses, you need to make sure that that intellectual property, through a proper skills transfer office at universities, that the private sector and existing companies they get licensing rights to that intellectual property. Now, it can either be licensing right in terms of the intellectual property, or it can be off that the university might also utilize the private sector to spin off some of these companies. And they contribute the technology to these companies, and in exchange, they get equity or the royalty payments, and eventually they will. And there's a lot of good examples with regard to that if we look and go forward. So for universities to really generate more agri-entrepreneurship, you need more structured approaches and partnerships with the private sector, with the agri sector. You need to go into cooperative arrangements in terms of your intellectual property and how and what you do with that intellectual property. And then very important is also to set up university incubators, either in terms of your own IP or then student-owned enterprises. But the thing is, you need partners. Universities, Incubator, and knowledge transfer offices You need to have partners, mentors, possible investors, and finance institutions that can help you with regard to spinning out more entrepreneurs and creating more agribusinesses. You might even get to a point where the private sector fund PhD students, they fund, in a sense, postgraduate research, whatever the case may be. And then through your partnerships, you must get access to mentors and markets and funding. I mean, that's just how it is. Now, to break that down into a much smaller scale is that we are working towards what we call the intentional entrepreneurial and skills development ecosystem. And the long and the short is, yes, we focus on universities, and it's a great way from an intellectual property perspective and research perspective to commercialize that into business entities with private sector as your partners with regard to that. But to have an intentional entrepreneurial ecosystem, it's one thing to have it on university level, either through the skills transfer office or then through the incubator at these businesses. But again, what are we doing with these business incubators at universities? Are we teaching the science and the theory of business, or are we instilling entrepreneurial mindset attributes? It's very interesting to note that these entrepreneurial mindset attributes that we talk about, if you look at the high order cognitive skill sets that the World Economic Forum speaks about, if you look at those skill sets, those that's necessary to remain human within the fourth industrial revolution, if you look at those and you look at the entrepreneurial mindset attributes, they are carbon copies of each other. So the long and the short is, how do we empower and capacitate students and manage the expectations that a university degree might not just lead to employment or might not lead to employment. On a micro level, within any rural community or a small town, you've got specific role players that must perform certain functions. And if you want to increase agri spending, if you want to increase agri businesses, it needs to be part of an ecosystem. You need to go back to the private sector and existing farmers and see what role they can play in terms of mentoring, what role they can play in opening up markets, what role they can play in terms of being business advisors, transfer skills, and so forth. So the drive in future should be to intentional ecosystems located in small towns, rural communities. We assume that the majority of these students will go to university and they will, in a sense, graduate, but we need more sustainable ecosystems on a university level and also on a more rural level. And then the thing about universities in terms of teaching entrepreneurship, we need to redefine that. We need to instill an entrepreneurial mindset and move away from teaching entrepreneurship per se. Like I said, we've been getting the packaging wrong for many years. So going forward, the long and the short is this is the private and public sector cooperation absolutely essential. Cooperative agreements and long-term strategic relationships in terms of research and commercializing intellectual property, absolutely essential. Setting our business incubators at universities, yes, but then you need to develop an ecosystem around those universities to make sure that there's enough mentors and advisors and whatever the case may be. And then on a micro level is to establish intentional ecosystem on local community level. And through that, you can then generate more agribusinesses.
Yeah, thank you so much, Danny, for that very elaborate and concise. I guess everybody will agree with me. One thing that I'm really intrigued is you said we don't teach entrepreneurship. And universities, I think we've been, as academic institutions, we've been put in our place. That is, we are not teachers of entrepreneurship, and we usually teach agribusiness, business ethics, and I guess that's what is in the curriculum. So thank you so much, Danny. Please, for all the participants, please put your questions on the chat. I see some of them, and I would really want now to move to the last speaker. If you'll bear with me, we will give a few, allow me to move beyond the time by a few minutes as we welcome our next and last but not least speaker, and that is Francesco. He's here with us from, he's very experienced from the European, so I don't want to make mistakes. I want to get it right. So he's from the European Innovation Council. He's a program manager for green technologies, and he's supporting, he's had a wide experience in supporting SMEs, and would really want to know what they are doing, what is available in terms of SME support for the African institutions, and what models are they deploying that we can learn as African universities, as African young people to move forward with knowledge-driven entrepreneurship. Over to you, Francesco. Francesco, are you with us? I saw he was already in, but I hope he has a good connection. Hannah, please mute. If Francesco is not here, please let me bring in some questions that were in the chat. Basil asked that how can we bridge the disconnect between university, government, private sector, and civil society for a better entrepreneurial growth? I think, Danny, if you could provide some insights here. I think you'd already mentioned something.
Well, the long and the short is conducive partnerships. We must understand that universities for many years has got this ivory tower mindset with regard to what they do. And they do brilliant work from a research perspective. But we must understand that on the one side, university must realize their own limitations. They must realize what their initial purpose was, why they were established, and how that is changing going forward. So the purpose of universities is not to generate entrepreneurs per se or necessarily. So that's on the one side with regard to universities. They need to adapt. They need to adapt to the seismic shifts happening in the world of workers and what required skills and competencies our students need to effectively function as and become economically viable and become contributing members of society. So universities must have honest conversations with regard to themselves in terms of their purpose and the reason for being on the one side. On the other side, you must understand in terms of governments as well, they must understand what their purpose are. Their purpose is to create a conducive environment for entrepreneurship and for economic growth, and to understand that job creation can only happen through the private sector. There's no other way for job creation to happen. So for governments to have the honest conversation with themselves in terms of what are they, what they're supposed to do, and what does a conducive environment look like. And in terms of these private-public partnership models, that's the only way to ensure that the disconnect between what we teach in universities and what the market wants, what we think, if it is necessary out there, there's the only way for us to bridge that gap. And then for the private sector to take hands with entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial ventures, with regard to that skills transfer and mentorship and business advisory services that they need to provide. I mean, there's absolutely no other way. So it's in terms of a total rethinking of the role of universities, the role of government, and how we can generate a conducive win-win scenario for both in taking the next generation forward.
Thank you so much.
So, Emma, if I can just jump in there. Thank you, Sir Jacob. The other thing is the biggest error we have made, Emmanuel, is to think that academia, business, government are separate entities in terms of what we're driving as a country. I think we now need to start measuring what matters. How are we measuring? What's our leading metric when it comes to agricultural productivity in every nation? Can we start measuring things like productivity per acre? And we know that that is the responsibility of the Ministry of Agriculture. Academia then comes in with that intellectual capital, pull out the thesis out of the drawers and say, this is how we can improve productivity per every square meter of land that we farm. For me, I think the measuring, what are we measuring, would be something to interrogate as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elton, for that. I like what Danny had said earlier on, looking at it as an ecosystem where each of the actors is contributing something, not in isolation. Yeah, thank you so much. Francesco is with us. Over to you, Francesco.
Thank you,
I don't know
Manuel.
if you can hear us. Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for the invitation. I'm Francesco Mateucci. I work at the European Commission within the new agency that joined together the European Innovation Council and the European Small Medium Enterprises Executive Agency. We are the only one executive agency that is empowered to combine policy and implementation, because it means that we write our own work program yearly, and then we manage, we monitor the projects, but we also work with the projects content-wise. So the idea that I would like to discuss with you today is on two ways. The first one is the experience that we are gaining and getting in this called hands-on approach, because our agency has the ambition to be not only a grant-giving agency, but an hands-on agency. So the first part of my talk will be around the government, the experience that the government might have in bringing this, I can say something like different ways of looking the public administration, not only as a grant-giving entity, but on something that designs how we provide the money and then try to follow up with the winners or the grantee of the money in order to make what we say to facilitate their innovation journey. And this is based on the first concept of the fact that our agency is trying to fill up with competencies its offices. This means that we are trying to employ people coming also from outside European Commission, so from the research world, but that has got a combination of research and entrepreneurial or innovation management experience. Why? Why we really believe that the difference, if we want really to increase the impact in the European ecosystem of innovation, we have to work thanks to our possibility of looking at the different projects with what I like to call with a drone view, because, you know, we are a grant, we can provide grants. And so we are something like a startup with a yearly budget of 1.5 billion euro that we provide to the winners of our calls. And so thanks to this huge amount of money, if we want to put all the projects, to cluster the projects and drive them and steer them toward the directions where, thanks to our experience and to our public administration role, we know, or approximately we understand which are the needs of the projects, we can help them in connecting. So we do not only monitor them, that this is the normal role of the executive agency of European Commission, but our hands-on approach is, okay, yeah, we monitor the administrative part, but we also help them in understanding better their needs and trying to facilitate their increasingly going to the market. So we provide grants in two ways, that is grants, so money, to partnership, but also since few months, we have in place the first venture capitalist fund of European Commission. It is called EIC Fund. And so we can also provide to small, medium enterprises the equity part. And where is the advantage of all this stuff for an SMEs or for a research center or for a corporate applying and winning our calls? The advantage is that we help them, as I said before, in connecting, we give them money, but we also give what we like to call the business acceleration services. That means we try to work with them content-wise, both from the science part and from the business part. We try to help them in connecting with the relevant stakeholders, in identifying the better stakeholders, in understanding if there is the need to look for certain type of standardization, of certification for their product under development. So the idea in this sense for the African governments that might be hearing me now is that what the model we are trying to apply is quite used in US, but has never been used so deeply in Europe. And what I feel after 1 year I am in this agency, having almost 20 years of experience in technological innovation in different roles as researchers, as corporate R&D managers, as startupper and things like this, my experience here after 1 year is that it can be really useful, this role of governmental helping and working with the grantees to drive them. Because the big advantage is that if you can employ inside the governmental institutions acknowledged people and you can give them the tool to look at all the projects, then these people can start grouping the projects, connecting them and helping them, facilitating what is said, the new role of the government in helping and nurturing innovation as a proactive or hands-on intermediary of knowledge, helping the people with different backgrounds and different languages, such as scientists, entrepreneurs, and farmers, to speak the same language. So the first part of my talk was linked to how to help government to support the agro-entrepreneurship. And the second part of my talk is for the SMEs. How does it work? The SMEs, agro field, agro entrepreneurs, agro companies in Europe, when they want to develop an innovation, when they want to buy, for example, innovation or to participate to the development of a certain innovation. What is crucial is once again this buzzword that is ecosystem. So what is crucial is to understand that you cannot work alone if you want to develop nowadays the technological innovation, because someone might be doing the same stuff that you are thinking, and you do not need to reinvent the wheel. You have to be part of this process. So the first thing, in my opinion, that is crucial is to have this mentality of openness and humbleness in speaking with the others, because this is the first crucial part. If you want to develop an ecosystem, you have to start from being humble and show the trust you have in your partners and get your partner's trust. So the first concept is, if you want to work, you have to be open. And if you want to manage the community, you have to base it on the trust. The second part is linked to the knowledge. You need, in African countries, to increase the knowledge of the people on what does it mean to make the entrepreneur. So you have to train the people. Thanks also, I've seen you are also winners of an Erasmus project. And in this case, it is really crucial also to learn somehow also, inside universities where the know-how can be really pushed to teach to the people the financial aspects, the technological aspect, as well as the management aspect. What is normal in a company is the need of at least 3 managers. One that is the CEO, that is the one managing everything, that knows how things are going, is the person that has to implement the vision of the company, where we want to go and why we want to go there, and how can we make money out of our know-how. And the second one is what is called the CTO, the Chief Technological Officer, or the Chief Scientific Officer, depending upon the grade of the technology you want to develop or you have to involve. And so someone that knows the technologies. If you have to develop, he has to know how to develop. If you have to buy, he has to know the best technology available. And so this is the technical part, the second one, the CEO, the CTO, and the third one is the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, the guy that has to have the knowledge to manage the money, because in the end, to make a company run or work, it's a question of best using your resources. And resources are always human resources, so get the right people on board. And the second part is money. So use the right amount of money to do in the best way your actions. And so These are things that are needed to be developed by and in the universities for the SMEs. So you have to work on this sense of belongingness to the community of developers in agriculture. And on the other side, you have to train the people to understand the importance of the knowledge, because nowadays, unfortunately, I have a very, very limited experience of agriculture in Africa, but what I've seen in my previous company, that they wanted to set up, and they set up quite big plantation in different kind of land in Madagascar, was the fact that to make it work, it took a long time, but the best investment was exactly to train the people, to trust the people that what European was doing is also for their advantage, for motivating this. And thanks to this trust and to investment they put inside the knowledge of the people, then the things went. And as far as I know, they are still working on this with a fruitful collaboration. So in the end, to conclude, we are going in front of the world with the increasing need of knowledge. It is said we are going toward the economy of knowledge. And so in the economy of knowledge, there is only one certainty. That is that things are changing, and what is needed is the knowledge, the spreading of the knowledge, the acquisition of the knowledge, and the best training of the people. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Francesco, for that. That's very useful. And one thing I really pick from what you've said is the need for a strategic direction, to have sort of that, how did you call it? The drone's view. And I see that there's a lot of work being done across the continent in terms of developing entrepreneurship capacity. But I think there is limited strategic support continent-wide. And I really see that this is an opportunity where the academics could come in to provide the opportunities, the strategic opportunities that young people can invest in. And that would be very great. And you've talked about the importance of knowledge and equipping people with the skill. And I like what Danny said earlier, that we don't, in the universities, we teach entrepreneurs, but you cannot teach entrepreneurship. It is developed. It just starts from a mindset, which I think is yet to grow in Africa. And I think it's an opportunity for the universities to take into account this. Now, we've gone past our time, but allow me 2 minutes that for someone to respond to this question. I think it was Michael who asked that there are rising opportunities, many about entrepreneurship in the continent. But then there is an issue that Abhi mentioned, that there are several other pitfalls like low growth, volatile prices, environmental concerns, expectations from consumers. And I guess this is a question from someone who is aspiring to be an entrepreneur. Elton or Danny, I don't know if you have some response to how Abhi can strategize himself to take these as opportunities. In a minute.
All right,
maybe we allow the elders to respond first.
Okay.
No, I think the long and the short is, one module that we need to incorporate as part of entrepreneurship education is, it should be called When the Shit Hits the Fan, the dark truths about entrepreneurship and strategies to cope. The long and the short is, like I said, why the entrepreneurial mindset attributes are so important is you must understand that risk, volatility, and all of these things are just part and parcel of entrepreneurship. You need to have the mindset attributes. You need to understand to be diligent, resilient, have self-leadership. You need to understand what you are as best you can manage it through entering the market with a minimum viable product. Make sure that you go through a process like design thinking to make sure that your value proposition is with a product market fit. So you can manage a lot of the risk either through the lean canvas or, like I said, design thinking. But the long and the short is that's just the realities of entrepreneurship, and it is something that, from a mindset perspective, you need to be able to handle and to cope. There will be failures. There will be ups and downs. It's a roller coaster ride, and it's just part of the game. Don't be over serious about this. Business is like real life Monopoly. When you lose a game, you just clear the board and you start over again.
Thank you so much, Danny, for that. I think I'll be your goat and the rest of the team. Let me ask Francesco a question. You mentioned that you offer support to young entrepreneurs and both financial and technical. Do we have such opportunities for African entrepreneurs, or it is limited to Europe only?
As far as I know, Emmanuel, it is limited to the winners of EU grantees. So this is, the link depends on the different calls. There are calls for European Commission that are also open to third countries and can be African, and others that are not. So it depends on the different calls of European Commission, this kind of support, if it is given or not. And obviously there are calls, Emmanuel, where this kind of support is given, and other calls where it's not given. In our agency, we give it within all the calls. Inside European AISMEA, it is given. In other calls, no, I don't know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would have given Elton to say something in a minute. Just in a few seconds, Elton. And because we've exceeded much the time that was allocated to us.
Sure. I think just to respond to Abby as well, is that as a business person or an entrepreneur, you have to be an opportunity architect. What are the trends that are happening in our environment? And what competencies can you develop or acquire to be able to build a great enterprise in agriculture? And I think there's so many problems and there's so many opportunities in any environment on the continent. There is a shortage in one value chain or the other. You need to find out what that is, and if possible, how do you move upstream in terms of the value chain and harness as much size of wallet as possible. And like just to echo what Jacob said, it's swimming with the sharks. Once you get into the entrepreneurial journey, there are no guarantees, but you just have to keep on going. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you so much, Elton, and thank you everyone for enduring additional 20 minutes of this session with some interruptions along the way. But it was a real pleasure to guide the conversation here. And I hear one great thing, I think an opportunity for universities that we need to provide the knowledge and not just teach entrepreneurship, but experience. Whatever accelerators, incubators we are establishing should be experiential, but also it's important. I believe this would be important for a forum as a network to provide the strategic direction of businesses. And then whatever challenges come along the way for the entrepreneurs, it's the cause of the business. That is how things work. So we are no longer trained to expect to just go and sit back and enjoy, like they used to say, study hard and enjoy your work. You graduate actually to more challenges. So it was a pleasure, and we need to know that we are working in an ecosystem with different actors who need to work together. And thank you so much. I really love the conversation. And at this point, I would like to hand over to Dr. Gero to give us closing words. And it was a pleasure again, guiding the conversation in this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. I just would like to check, is Professor Gogo online?
Yes, I'm online, please.
So Professor Gogo, before I give the closing remarks, can you just make a brief summary?
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony. Okay, I hope I'm audible enough.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think I was to give a summary of the presentation which was done yesterday and today. but because of time, I think Emmanuel was able to give a summary yesterday. So I'll focus on the presentations for today, just for the sake of time. So today we had about 3 sessions, which was discussed. And the first session was about the role of incubators in the promotion of agripreneurship and research in Africa, where we had a keynote address from Dr. Pisan, who made some very key important information, particularly on the emphasis on learning by doing in university education, and also partnership becoming very key in this area. And also she mentioned that we also need to look at partnership with industries in acceleration of programs. Then we had Mrs. Christine, the Executive Director of Together We Grow, who was also trying to answer the question of the role of universities as spaces for nurturing talent and building lifelong entrepreneurship skills. And in her submission, she focused on the need to diversify as a driver for innovation, and also the need to have a partnership, particularly with the governmental and non-governmental organizations, and also the need for changing to meet the need of students as universities, and also the need to change to meet the need of the industries. And one of the key things that she mentioned also, we need to focus on incubation through early pipeline efforts. Then we also had session 5, where we are talking about the panel on experiences from higher education institutions and academic network on the development of incubators to promote Agri entrepreneurship. And in this, we had Dr. Augustine, who was presenting a particular relation to what is happening in the University of Abomey-Calavi. And based on this, he mentioned that they have supported over 80% incubatees in this area of incubation. And one of the things that they have also done is that they have increased awareness of the interest in incubation in the university. But then he was able to mention that there are some of the key challenges which they are facing, particularly regarding funding and sustainability of the business models. Then we had Mr. Peter Kruger, who also talked about very important key points here. Like he mentioned that there's need for technology. Technology is very important in terms of promoting entrepreneurship. Then he was also able to mention that there's a very big difference between accelerators and incubators. And these two, they require different treatments in terms of entrepreneurship. Then he was able to focus on, to mention there's need to focus on the capital efficient business ideas. Then the other thing that is mentioned is that at this point, there is a significant automation in agri-food systems, which is mainly attributed to pandemic, among others. Then we had Mrs. Ebony Weber, the Chief Operations Officer of Manas, USA. In her submission, she was able to mention that there is need to change the face of agriculture by linking hands. In this way, it was talking about the need for partnership. Then in this organization, Manas, they're driven by professionalism, engaging, and diversity. Then he also mentioned that there's need to create awareness, particularly on internships, scholarships, mentorships, which is basically to improve on career pathways of students. Then he also emphasized the needs of partnering with the organization, particularly in terms of benefit related to career development. Then we had a session of video documentary, which was basically about Dairy Value Chain by Gabriel Cuendo. And this was basically to highlight the importance of self-employment through entrepreneurship, whereby he was able to create more employment opportunities for the youth. And he was also able to overcome hunger and poverty. Then for session 6, this was a roundtable on the role of stakeholders in supporting Agri entrepreneurship. And the main question that was being asked is that how can universities mobilize and work with private sector in building youth entrepreneurship? And in this, Mr. Elton Matisse was able to articulate some issues, particularly on the need to focus on collaborative research. Then we also need to invest more on capital, particularly intellectual, relational, and financial capital. And in his submission, he says that there is need to interrogate problems and opportunities in communities. And we also need to invest on skills, particularly capacity development of staff. And we need to enhance business competitiveness, particularly regarding market accessibility. Then he also mentioned that there is need to develop and harmonize the working policy. And another key important thing that he mentioned is that there is need to enhance to enhance accessibility to credit facilities. Then we had Mr. Daniel Jacobs, the CEO of Young Entrepreneurs, who was able to, in his submission, he mentioned that there is lack of entrepreneurial mindset, particularly in students. And most of the time, students get into business because of necessity, but not out of choice. Then he also mentioned that there is need for African universities to focus on their research more on the, African universities focus more their research on the poor and marginalized, and they forget about the private sector. Then you mentioned a very important point that there is need to redefine entrepreneurship. Particularly, the question that we posed is that are universities teaching science and theory of business or entrepreneurial mindset and skills? So this is a question that we need to answer as academia. Then another important point that I was able to come up with is that universities need to focus more on private sector partnership. Then another important point is that universities most of the time think of themselves as ivory towers, and we need to come out of this mindset and understand why universities were created. I think that is a very important point to note. Then we had Francesco, the last presenter, who was trying to address the issue of the government support in terms of entrepreneurship. And in his submission, he noted the importance of hands-on approach regarding entrepreneurship and the importance of follow-up, particularly monitoring in terms of funding from entrepreneurship. Then there's also need to enhance on the mentality of openness and trust in working together in entrepreneurship. And one of the key things that he closed his remarks with is that there's need for capacity building. So I'm sorry that I had a long summary, but I think that is those are some of the main points that I was able to come up with that I think we need to have them as a take-home message so that you can be able to work on them. So thank you very much, Anthony. Maybe back to you now for closing.
I thank you all. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much for persevering throughout the two-day virtual conference. Many things have been raised as a team. We will be getting back to work on these and get a conference communique that is more structured and providing guided direction of action. We will be communicating to each one of you. And these recordings are available direct on YouTube. So allow me just to request if you can just unmute your video and we can take a picture to conclude this great event. I really appreciate all the speakers. Thank you very, very much. Yes, Maria, you are the chief photographer online.
Thank you so much, Anthony. A very good opportunity. Let us wait for the colleagues. If you could please turn on your camera. Anthony, if we can wait for a couple of minutes. Now there is somebody is sharing the screen. Please, if you could stop sharing the screen.
I'm not able to see who is sharing the screen.
It is Peter Omboto.
Could you please
Okay, I'm trying to get off.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get off. A technical hitch here. Sorry.
If you go up, okay, perfect, excellent. Very good, thank you so much. Let us see if Dixon, could you please turn on your camera? Zakia, Gala, and probably also our coordinator, Patience. I think, okay. Delegates are coming.
Maria, there's something happening because many names are not really fitting with the photos or with the pictures. Like I have another name and I think it's for others.
I think yes, however. Sana. Okay, good, excellent. If you are ready. So I've already done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll be keeping in touch with each one of you. Thank you for making this a great event.
Thank you.
All the very best. For those traveling to Benin, see you physically in Benin.